Hey everyone, my name's Tokaine, one of Method's tanks. Today I'll be going over all of the tank specs for the upcoming 9.2 raid Sepulcher of the first ones. Just a disclaimer, tank balance has honestly never been as good as it currently is in Shadowlands. Every tank is viable with their own set of unique strengths and weaknesses. This is my opinion for a world first raiding level. Additionally, everything in this video is subject to change based on any future tuning. Now let's just get into it. So while I don't believe any of the tank specs are inherently weak or not usable, I do for the sake of the video have to put one in last place, and unfortunately I'm going to put the Protection Warrior here. This upcoming raid has a lot of magic damage. While Protection Warriors excel really well against blockable physical damage, they really don't have many tools to deal with magic damage. Which is a shame honestly, because the Jailer looks like to be a very physical heavy fight, but you have to get there first. The Protection Warrior tier sets are really nice though. The 2 set makes it so every 30 rage you consume, you generate a stack of Seeing Red. At 8 stacks, it transforms into Outburst, which makes your next Shield Slam or Thunderclap 200% more effective. Additionally, it's going to grant you a free Ignore Pain as well. The 4 set makes it so the damage bonus granted by Avatar is increased by an additional 10%. Furthermore, it grants you a 10% DR as well as granting you Outburst instantly. So this tier set really increases the fluidity of Prot Warrior's playstyle. It's going to be very important to keep track of your Seeing Red stacks and your Outburst to really use the full potential of this tier bonus. The 200% effectiveness applies to both the damage and rage generation of both Shield Slam and Thunderclap. The slow from Thunderclap is also increased. However, in almost all situations, you're really going to want to be using your empowered Shield Slams over Thunderclap, outside of very heavy AoE situations of course. The free Ignore Pains we're going to be receiving from this as well is going to be a nice little boost to the Protection Warrior survivability. So why bring a Protection Warrior to your raid? Outside of the Battle Shout buff, Protection Warrior brings some utility to your raid in the form of Rallying Cry. This is a really nice cooldown to use when the raid is about to take a large hit of damage, boosting the entire raid's health pool. Furthermore, as a Necrolord warrior, you bring Banner to the raid, which can be played around with to optimize the DPS gain you give to your raiders. Necrolord with double legendary is going to be very strong, as the legendary Glory can be paired with our legendaries such as Reprisal or the Wall to further increase your rage generation. This, along with the tier set, will make it so you're able to almost keep 100% uptime on the mastery buff from Conqueror's Banner. This is going to be a massive boost to your survivability. Unfortunately, I don't think Protection Warrior brings anything unique to the raid this tier, and with DPS Warrior being so strong, you're most likely going to have at least one in the raid to cover the Battle Shout debuff. Now the next 2 tanks are so close to each other, it's really hard to order them. Personally though, I'm going to put Vengeance Demon Hunter at number 5. Vengeance Demon Hunter is a solid, mobile, all-round tank. They do suffer against constant melee hits, but they are one of the best tanks at surviving large single hits, as well as being a very good tank against magic damage. So why number 5? Havoc DH is looking really good this tier, so Chaos Brand isn't really a factor in their decision. If you do need a Chaos Brand though, you shouldn't worry about bringing Vengeance Demon Hunter, as it is a truly solid tank. Coming with its own natural cheat death, this is going to be really good at covering mistakes while you're learning fights. The downside of Vengeance Demon Hunter is it really doesn't hit that hard on pure single target. It can do decent damage on AoE, but it severely lacks on one target. So let's go over the tier sets for Vengeance Demon Hunter. The 2 set simply makes it that damage from our Immolation Aura has a 10% chance to generate a Lesser Soul Fragment. The 4 set makes it so that consuming one of these Lesser Soul Fragments reduces the remaining cooldown of either Immolation Aura or Fell Devastation by 1 second. So the 2 set bonus is not very good on pure single target situations. On AoE, you'll be drowning in souls, but on single target you will hardly notice these extra spawns. The 4 set is pretty strong combined with the Demonic talent. This will help reduce the overall spikiness of Vengeance Demon Hunter's damage intake, as people naturally just have more uptime in Metamorphosis. Vengeance Demon Hunter is already really good in AoE situations, and this set bonus really just builds upon that strength even further. You can somewhat play around with the 4 set bonus as well. If you really need a Fell Devastation soon, you cannot use Immolation Aura, so all of the cooldown reduction is pumped into Fell Devastation. This can be really useful in situations where you need to get back into meta really quickly. You'll most likely be sticking to the Kyrian Covenant, and will be using the Dark Glare Medallion legendary when you have your tier set, just to increase the uptime of Fell Devastation further. So Vengeance Demon Hunter itself doesn't really bring that much to the raid. It brings Chaos Brand, but Havoc can already bring that. It also doesn't have Darkness, which is a very strong cooldown that Havoc does bring. It excels in situations where you need to kite, for example the final phase on the Council of Blood in Castle Nathria, but there really isn't much of that in raids though, and pretty much none of that this tier. Maybe on the last 3, but they are untested so we can't say for sure. It is still a good tank, and if you are looking to bring one to your raid, you shouldn't worry, as they will do perfectly fine this tier. They just don't really bring anything special to the table. The next tank I have put here is the Guardian Druid. Guardian Druid holds a special place in my heart because I truly love the playstyle of maximising your output through cat and owl weaving. Guardian Druid is a versatile tank which has the capability to be near enough unkillable, or, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the ability to do extremely competitive AoE and single target damage. The downside is you do have to give up some strength in one area to gain it in another, however Guardian Druid did receive a nice boost from their tier sets. The 2 set makes it so when you cast Barkskin you enter Berserk for 4 seconds. The 4 set makes it so while you're in Berserk, you will radiate cosmic damage to nearby enemies, and you will heal yourself every second for its duration. I really like this set bonus for Guardian Druid, the 2 set especially. When you enter Berserk, the cooldown of your Frenzied Regeneration is reduced significantly, so this will naturally increase the amount of Frenzied Regeneration we can get off in a fight, increasing our self-sustain. Additionally, using Survival of the Fittest and the Toughest Bark Conduit, we will pretty much have Barkskin on a 30-second cooldown. This pretty much means you have a 20% DR up every 20 seconds. The 4 set helps fill in some gaps as well. When you purely play as a bear, you really don't do that much damage, and believe it or not, threat has been an issue this expansion. The extra damage provided from this 4 set will really help plug those holes in that area. Guardian Druid really doesn't bring much to the raid in the form of utility. The main one is Stampeding Roar though, which as a Guardian Druid is on a reduced cooldown of 1 minute. Additionally, you can help off-heal in heavy moments by combining Heart of the Wild and running Restoration Infinity, although the fight needs to line up properly where you're able to not tank and turn into a pseudo-healer. You also do have to give up Feral or Balance Affinity, which are really the ways Guardian can do damage, so you are sacrificing your DPS output. You have several viable Covenant options as Guardian Druid, but my personal favourite is Knifey, just for the power it provides while cat and owl weaving. Kyurem is also going to be something to look out for this tier with double legendary, as you're able to buff up a member of your raid without sacrificing your own powerful legendary slot instead. This would be a good option when you're not comfortable with weaving, or you're on a fight where it doesn't really allow it. Guardian is very strong and a sturdy tank, and I think even if you play at a base level without any form of weaving, it is still a solid pick. However, if you truly want to reach Guardian Druid's full potential, you'll need to learn how to get the most out of cat and owl weaving, which can take some time, but it is truly rewarding when done correctly. This is why I've placed Guardian Druid here on this list. So these next 2 are also very close together, if anything even more so than the previous 2 tanks. They both excel in different situations though. So at number 3, I'm putting the Brewmaster Monk. So Brewmaster has been a powerhouse tank for so long now. It's a tank for the past 2 expansions has excelled. However, in Shadowlands, it no longer really fits that spot anymore. As I stated earlier, tank balance has never been this close before, and because of that, Brewmaster is no longer the default option to go when you think of an immortal all-rounder. They're a tank that has always excelled in physical damage situations due to the nature of Stagger and how it smooths their damage intake. They do struggle slightly with magic damage, but with how Celestial Brew is a flat absorb, that kind of fills in for that shortcoming. They do decent damage on single target, and have a playstyle which does reward min-maxing through their cooldown Invoke Nizao and managing your stagger while that's up. So unfortunately, the Brewmaster tier set is entirely passive pretty much. The 2 set for Brewmaster isn't really that exciting, it simply reduces the damage targets affected by your Fiery Breath do to you by 4%. Good, but boring. The 4 set is where it gets really spicy, as the 4 set makes it so your Keg Smash just does a flat 50% more damage, as well as healing you for 66% of the damage it deals. Not only that, but it also increases your max health by 66% of the damage dealt as well for 10 seconds. You really won't notice the 2 set at all. Probably one of the most boring 2 sets added to the tanks. Flat DR is always welcome, but it's nothing you can play around since Fiery Breath is always up most of the time anyway. Now the 4 set is still somewhat passive, but it's pretty strong, especially on AoE situations. It naturally synergizes well with the main legendary Brewmaster's use, Stormstout's Keg, and it really plugs one of Brewmaster's biggest holes, which is its low health pool. This will give you an absurd amount of health even on single target. Like Demon Hunter, Brewmaster brings a mandatory buff to the raid in the form of Mystic Touch. However, the value of this buff is reduced due to the strength of Mistweavers right now. It does add more flexibility to your composition if you bring a Brewmaster though. Other than that, they don't really bring anything extra to the raid that other tanks don't bring. They're a solid tank with a smooth damage intake, capable of doing decent AoE and single target damage, and would be a great addition to your raid composition. The only really negative thing is that they have almost no form of self-healing, and if misplayed, they can get destroyed by magic damage, which this tier is pretty heavy on. This is why I've placed Brewmaster at number 3. A personal favourite tank of mine, but one that I think is a bit outclassed by the next 2. So Blood Death Knight always scale well into expansions, and Shadowlands is no different. They've reached the point where a Blood Death Knight who plays properly can pretty much be invisible on your healer's raid frames. A tank that doesn't care what type of damage they take, as long as they can survive it, they can just heal it back up. A tank who has an ability that can let them straight up ignore several mechanics on bosses. Probably the most self-sufficient tank, and what I think is the most fun tank to play in high-end content. So yes, I like them. The tier set for Death Knight is pretty nutty. The 2 set makes it so your Heart Strike increases your strength by 1% per cast, and it also extends the duration of Dancing Rune Weapon. The 4 set makes it so when you take damage, you have a chance equal to 100% of your parry chance to lash out using Heart Strike. Additionally, Dancing Rune Weapon also summons an additional weapon. The 2 set is very straightforward, but very powerful. You will easily come out of Dancing Rune Weapon with 15 to 20% extra strength, if not more, and the buff does extend for 10 seconds after Dancing Rune Weapon ends. The Heart Strikes from your 4 piece also apply to this effect. This bonus is exceptionally strong in Mythic Plus, and although it is weaker in the raid, it is still a very nice set bonus and really beefs up the Blood Death Knight. It synergizes really well with our main current legendary, Crimson Rune Weapon, but I do want to give a mention to Gorfiend's Domination, as this also synergizes pretty well with the set and has some potential with how low the cooldown of Vampiric Blood will become. Blood Death Knight is unique, where all covenants are viable. You're tanking a lot of mobs, Venthyr. You want mobility and lots of survivability, Night Fae. You want the highest single target damage possible, Kyrian, and you need a lot of extra grips, Necrolord. You can play all of them. But Death Knight isn't one of the best tanks in terms of output. You do fall behind other tanks in the damage department. However, everything else you do excel in. Death Knight brings anti-magic zone to your raid, and even after the nerfs that happen in 9.1, it is still a very good cooldown on blood, especially when combined with your own Vampiric Blood, as the absorb scales on your own health. Additionally, Death Grip and Mass Grip are very strong tools, and there are some fights where grips are going to be very useful, such as Anduin, and having a Death Knight there will be really good. We're not done yet though. Another tool Death Knight has at its disposal is Anti-Magic Shell. This ability allows Death Knights to just ignore some boss mechanics, which is turbo broken when used correctly. The downside of Death Knight is your lack of mobility, but with the ability to swap covenants, and with all 4 of them being viable options for Death Knight, you can easily swap around to Night Fae or Venthyr to provide you with that extra mobility if you need it. Death Knight is just such a good tank when they're played correctly, and I would highly recommend it to any raiding roster. And finally, in the number 1 spot, we have the Protection Paladin. Are you surprised? I doubt it. So Protection Paladin has always had this stigma of being a paper tank, and yes, while it might not be the brick wall that other tanks can be, it more than makes up for that in its plethora of other benefits, such as its output, both damage and healing, as well as its multiple utility tools to help the raid. If given the opportunity, a Protection Paladin can effectively be an extra DPS to your raid, and with Ashen Hallow and the Mad Paragon legendary, you can outburst a lot of DPS during Lust, which is always fun. Ashen Hallow healing was nerfed by about 15% in 9.2, but it's still a very strong ability for Protection Paladin. Night Fae is pretty good with double legendary as well. Venthyr doesn't really gain that much from double legendary, but it honestly feels so bad to play with. So the tier set for Protection Paladin is pretty good. The Protection Paladin 2 set simply makes it so your Shield of the Righteous increases your block chance by 4% per cast, stacking up to 3 times. The 4 set is similar to the Death Knight set, where when you take damage, you have a chance equal to 100% of your block chance to cast a judgment at your attacker. The 2 set is just a flat boost to your damage reduction of around 4 to 5%. The 4 set is going to drastically increase your holy power generation, and you will really notice this. It's going to be very important to keep on top of your holy power to ensure you aren't overcapping. It is going to be exceedingly easy to keep up Shield of the Righteous now, and you can expect to be throwing out a few more Word of Glories as well. The bonuses are simple, but strong. Right, Protection Paladin in the raid. Where do I begin? Protection Paladin is basically a healer, a tank, and a DPS all in one big golden package. With Hand of the Protector, your Word of Glories will literally 0 to 100 people every time, which is very useful when your raid is learning fights and people tend to make more mistakes. You have 2 very valuable tools in the form of Blessing of Protection or Blessing of Spell Warning, which have multiple uses, are an extremely powerful tool when used correctly, allowing the ability to ignore and even remove mechanics. Blessing of Sacrifice is a 2-minute damage reduction you can throw on any other member of the raid to help them survive during certain moments. You have an immunity in the form of Divine Shield, which can straight up break mechanics. You have an unmatched damage when built properly, and this is something that if played around can be very rewarding. Also, due to the talent Holy Shield, you're able to block spells. This, combined with the fact that your Consecration, scaling with your Mastery, provides you with a flat damage reduction, means you are really good at handling magic damage as well. These are just some of the reasons why I think Protection Paladin is the current top tank going into this tier, and I would highly recommend bringing one to your raid composition if you have a player who is comfortable on the spec. The main downside of Protection Paladin is you are punished more for mistakes on them, as they are less durable than other tanks. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about the tanks, and just remember that all tanks are viable. It has honestly never been this close before. It is more important that the players on those tanks are just comfortable. If you're not comfortable, you are going to make more mistakes. This video was just my personal opinion, and it's all subject to change based on tuning. What's your favourite tank to play and why? Leave it in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, like or dislike the video, and turn on notifications so you'll never miss a video in the future. I've been Tokaine, and good luck next tier.